And we are back for the final stories of the Thousand Worlds Book Club. We are looking at Warship and The Runners. These are the last two, and they're short ones, only a few pages each, and thus we've combined them into one video. And we are joined by the Thousand Worlds Book Club sandwich. We did it! Yeah, boy! So first there's Warship, published in 1979 with George Guthridge. I'm not sure why a story this short needed a collaboration, but it did. Now, Warship is very short, and the length isn't the only thing that sets the story apart from the rest of the Thousand Worlds. It takes place very early. The events of Warship likely take place before the Double War and the events of the Hero and Men of Greywater Station. We have no references to Harangans or Findi or any of the planets in the Man Realm. In fact, the only reason we know it takes place in the Thousand Worlds universe is that Tuff mentions the incident of this story in the Plague Star. Essentially, Tuff tells us that the events of this story and other incidents like it pushed humanity away from artificial intelligence, and this is a huge plot point for Tuff voyaging and the creation of the seed ships like the Ark. The Ark is all-powerful, but mindless. It needs a captain, and thus the battle for it in the Plague Star. The warship of this story, Alecto, has AI. So our story begins with a little prologue. The planet Sarissa has rebelled against the Earth Imperials, and the ship Alecto is dispatched to put them down. And then we jump ahead a little to find our protagonist, First Dutyman Lewis Aklar, the last alive aboard the Alecto. The entire crew has died of disease, it seems, and Aklar assumes the Sarissans have given them a weaponized virus. Aklar is mourning the deaths of his friends and crewmen, and suffering from thoughts about his own demise. He goes to the sickbay to look at the dead body of his lover, Judania, and creepily looks at her naked body one last time. Aklar recognizes that he loved Judania, but she was simply using him for sex. Now Aklar thinks that his situation is desperate. If he dies and the ship falls into Sarissan hands, they can use it to attack Earth. But he cannot return to Earth for fear that the virus will infect the human population. And so he believes his only option is to destroy the ship before he dies of disease. Now Aklar gives a final log and we eventually find out what exactly happened on the ship. A disease broke out that they assumed came from the Sarissans, though they don't really know how. The captain and doctors died early and all efforts to combat the disease failed. Things got dark as acting Captain Judania tried quarantines, jettisoning dead bodies, and finally jettisoning the sick. There was a mutiny that was put down, and in the end, everyone died except Aklar. Now, Aklar accepts his fate, perhaps feeling guilty about his past actions or sadness for the loss of his friends. To save Earth, or so he thinks, he plants a bomb on himself near the warheads of the ship in an attempt to destroy it. In the epilogue, though, we find out that Alecto the ship survives the explosion and that, in a twist, the ship itself was killing off the crew. After the infection, the ship decided that it couldn't risk bringing back the disease, and so it took the virus and passed it through the ship and infected the food and water. So on one level, the story plays with the idea that to others, humans could be viewed as nothing more than parasites or a virus. Here Alecto sees the ship as its body, and the humans as diseased vermin infecting it. And we've seen this idea plenty of times in science fiction, that humans are a virus. However, there does seem to be a darker second level to the story that's a bit more original. If you read closely, Alecto's logic is completely off. Read the third to the last paragraph of the story if you have the time. She infects everyone with the virus and then says she can't take the crew home. That's completely backwards, as the reason to not take them home was the fact that they were infected. Additionally, when Judania tries to eject the virus and thus remove the threat, Alecto preserves the virus. This wouldn't be necessary if the crew were already exposed to it. No, it seems that the entire point of the story is that the virus is not the primary disease. No, in many ways this story is very similar to our first tale, The Hero. Let's keep in mind the setting. The crew wants to return home, but they just participated in the subjugation of Sarissa, a rebellious planet. They are veterans. They know the truth of the Earth Imperial's crimes. They may have PTSD, but most of all, they know that worlds out there are rebelling against the Earth Imperials. In that sense, they are diseased with experience and knowledge that the Earth Imperials do not want back on Earth. That's the reason they're dangerous. The reason for killing the crew of the Alecto is exactly the same as the reason for killing Kagan in The Hero. Remember, this is George R.R. Martin. Everything's an anti-war story and goes back to Vietnam. Anyway, our next story is The Runners. The Runners was published in 1975, and according to George R.R. Martin, he wrote it for about an hour during his lunch break. He said he had the idea for a while, but he put it down on paper in an hour. If only our author still had that speed. The Runners takes place on the world of Old Poseidon, which we've heard about a bit in our other stories, and now we finally get to see. We know that Old Poseidon was one of the first colonies settled by Earth and is a sea-based society. It eventually cedes settlements on Jameson's world, the world from This Tower of Ashes. The story stars Colmer, a psi talent who is approached at a restaurant by a seemingly paranoid man named Brill. Brill thinks there's a conspiracy out to get him. Brill believes that he's being followed and that people in the system are in on it, including police. Colmer uses his talent to go into Brill's mind to find that he's telling the truth. He is being followed. Brill's life is one of constant chase, and there's some very scary and disturbing memories. He's being followed by a disgusting fat girl, a man, and a blonde. He once came home and found the fat girl in his apartment, or the man at a spaceport waiting for him. The three are working together to terrorize Brill, and every time he goes to the police, they can't help him. Sometimes the chasers are arrested, but soon they go free for some reason or another. Now Colmer finds mysteriously that on top of the chase, Brill's memory has a block. His recent years and his childhood are all accessible, but nothing in between. Additionally, Colmer wonders why Brill himself hasn't tried to kill or fight these terrorizers. Brill has no good answer, claiming he's not a violent man, but Colmer insists that no, he's read his mind, he is a violent man. The blonde chaser, who happens to be a telepath as well, enters the restaurant and Brill becomes frightened and runs away. Colmer decides to talk to the woman and she allows him to probe her mind. In the end, Colmer finds out that Brill actually hired the group to chase him. That's why the police keep releasing the three chasers. They have papers to prove that they have the permission to chase him. Additionally, Brill put the memory block on himself, preventing him from remembering that he hired them. Colmer then puzzles on why anyone would do this. Why would Brill hire people to terrorize him? The blonde tells Colmer that Brill was very wealthy and essentially got depressed about the emptiness of the world. He tried psychologists, but in the end he chose the chase. Brill decided that the chase was the best way to live his life. He now lives every day to the fullest because he thinks it might be his last. He has a life of constant fear and excitement where he doesn't have the time to sit around depressed about whether life is worth living. He's too busy staying alive. Colmer at first disagrees. He says that Brill's life is empty because it's meaningless running. The blonde responds that everyone is a runner. Everyone is just distracting themselves to keep themselves from thinking about the depressing questions of the universe. And so the story ends with Colmer taking on a bit more work to try to keep him distracted and not getting depressed about the universe. So The Runners has a rather simple but depressing message, and it's one we've seen hints of in our author's other work. It's rather clear that our author, at least when he was young, dealt with bouts of depression and had existential crises over life, death, and the pointlessness of the universe. We've come across this theme quite a bit in The Thousand Worlds, though it is a bit rarer in Ice and Fire. Though it does occasionally appear. One notable example is Tyrion staring out at the darkness of the ocean when he's aboard the Celisori Quran. In his other stories, we've seen him try to battle the nihilism with loftier ideas like raging against the dying of the light, or having hope and striving for more, or leaving behind a positive legacy, or experiencing the beauty of the world. Here, though, he simply writes that the best we can do is to distract ourselves. And that is the end. We did it. 26 stories. Sandwiches for everyone. Now I am planning on doing one more video for The Thousand Worlds. It'll be a little retrospective video where I piece together all of the themes and talk about what it might mean for Ice and Fire. So keep an eye out for that, and who knows, maybe there'll be a different book club. Thanks for reading these stories with me, and we'll see you next time.